Hello, I'm Bailey Bell, and this is the Teens in the D Community Perspective. Welcome to part 2 of our interviews with members of the infamous Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated and our discussion about the election, our communities, and their roles, which is the Black Greek-led organization that they've had in this election process. Today, we're going to talk about the recent controversial and historic election from a different perspective. The 2020 election has been historic for many reasons. One of the things that I recently became aware of is a unified supportive group called the Divine Nine. Y'all gave a lot of support to this election, and we're witnessing the history of an election with President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris. Vice President-elect Harris is a Black and Indian American woman, and this is the first time a woman or woman of color has held this position. Additionally, Senator Harris is a proud graduate of Howard University and a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated. And today, I am so honored to be introducing Dr. Deirdre Young. She's a surgical dentist, I believe, is that correct? And she is an enthusiastic advocate for quality health programming and social justice for marginalized populations. Dr. Young has served in a variety of roles across Metro Detroit. She was recognized for her success as one of Crain's Detroit's 40 Under 40 this year. And currently, Dr. Young is Chief Diversity Officer and Assistant Dean in the Office for Institutional Equity and Inclusion. Dr. Young leads diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts to guide campus-wide decisions, practice, and policies to build a stronger campus community. And like Vice President-elect Harris, she's a proud member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated and also attended Howard University. So first I want to say thank you so much for joining us today. And I'd like to start by asking you, like, who is the Divine Nine? Like, who, in your opinion, who is the Divine Nine? And why was it so important to unite these groups for the election this year?
Well, thank you for that question, Bailey, and I'm excited to be here, and it's really an honor to be here and a part of this particular discussion today, especially in this moment. Divine Nine, it's nine. It's nine historically African-American or Black organizations, Greek-led organizations. Many of them were founded on my campus, Howard University in Washington, D.C. And basically it is a consortium of like-minded individuals who understand that service, uplifting of the community, and unity can mobilize communities to do awesome things. I am a member of the first, I'll say it again, the first Greek letter organization, sorority, African-American sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. I joined Alpha Kappa Alpha at the Alpha chapter, which just simply means first, the first chapter at Howard University. And there are other Greek letter organizations such as Delta Sigma Theta, Omega Psi Phi, that were also founded at the illustrious campus of Howard University. But ultimately, the Divine Nine showed up and showed out in Wisconsin, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Michigan, You name a battleground state, you probably will find a member of the Divine Nine in their hat, recognizing their affiliation to their fraternal or sorority, and also with some type of sign saying, let's go support not just the first South Asian, not just the first African American, not just the first immigrant. You know, parents were both immigrants and they created this beautiful Harris, but also she's a woman. We mobilized communities. We deployed every tactic we know to get her elected. So now she's vice president-elect, and we are proud of not just energizing our communities, but also the communities in which we dwell in, which looks different in some cases of what I am and what I represent. But one thing that we all are, we're a part of the democratic process. And though color may differ, or gender may differ, or religions may differ, one thing that didn't differ is that we believe in the democratic process. We all went to go vote, and we collectively came together to get President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris into office. So we will be very excited when they are in DC in January. I will be there with my line sisters supporting this historic event.
Yes. And as we're talking about the election and you guys getting out there, do you guys know how effective you guys being out there, all the Divine Nine being out there and getting the voting process, do you know how effective that were to get the efforts for people to come in and vote? Do you know how effective that was for you guys?
Well, it had to be effective because we're looking at a historic election. So absolutely, the numbers don't lie. I mean, we're looking at margins. We're talking about, is it 78 million people voted for President-elect Biden and Vice President-elect Harris? I mean, that's the most ever in any election. So we definitely mobilize people. There are people who never voted before in their life, ever. And somehow, some way, we got our aunts, our cousins, our grandparents, our little cousins who just turned 18 and was allowed to legally cast a ballot. And whether it was absentee or in person or early voting, we did what we needed to do. We drove people with our PPE on, making sure that we got people to the polls. That's what it's about. And we also working behind the scenes, whether you see a campaign on television, some ad on television, something on Instagram, it was probably a Howard alum that created that beautiful video that we see. As a matter of fact, I know two that was working on the Young Adults for Biden campaign and created a lot of Instagram videos to get young people excited about this democratic process.
Yes, and there's a lot of Black women out there and we don't get a lot of acknowledgement. And how do you think that as Black women, how do you think our vote influenced this presidential race, and specifically in Detroit and Atlanta?
Well, let's just women. We're over half of this country, okay? So if women just go out and vote for women, I mean, this would be a no-brainer. We would always win. That's not the case, as we saw with, unfortunately, former Secretary of State Clinton. Sometimes things don't always work out that way. But in this particular case, it didn't matter. Back to my original comments before we started today, it didn't matter which Greek letter organization Vice President-elect was a member of. What matters is that she was a member of the Divine Nine. So, you know, it encompassed both Black men and Black women. And we galvanized together around a common cause, which was to get the first member of Divine Nine into the White House, into office. And we're just very excited about this. It was not easy. Nothing worth having. You have to work hard for it. It's worth fighting for. So yeah, you know, there was commercials out there trying to spin things in the direction they'd like to spin it. There are people who can take a fact and spin it this way or spin it that way. But at the end of the day, the truth is the truth. And I'm just glad to see that the American people woke up. The American people saw what was happening, not just in their little bubble, because now guess what? It was on social media. It was on every media outlet. You could see what was happening in the streets. You can see what was happening in Wisconsin. You could see what was happening across our country with George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, et al. It countless others. It just continues and continues. But this isn't new. The Black community, this isn't new for us. We're talking about over 400 years of persecution, of illegally taking lives. I'm just happy that we can now see what's happening. I'm happy that it is now lifted up where people who used to live in their bubble, they can't live in their bubble anymore because they can see the travesty for what it is. They can see that it's unjust, and the people made a decision. And they voted, and it will stand January at the inauguration.
Yes. And speaking of which, Dr. Young, you did tell us, and we were informed that you were a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated.
Yes,
so the sister of Kamala Harris. Would you like to share some of the emotions that went in with her getting elected? Like, how did you feel when you found out that she was going to be the Vice President of the United States?
From a personal perspective, because I only can talk about myself, I can't represent the organization, but for me, I mean, it was powerful. I mean, she walked the same campus that I did. You know, she joined the same organization that I did. It's just a remarkable thing to, you know, be a part of that legacy, to be a part of that sisterhood to none. I mean, this surprised me because we are the first. So to see Kamala as the first vice president-elect, and who knows, maybe the first president-elect in 4 to 8 years. I don't know what the future holds, but what I do know is that this is historic. And, but you know, on the backs of many, she didn't just walk into there. You had people like Stacey Abrams. You had the mayor in Atlanta, Keisha. You know, I look at the Spelmanite, the Florida A&M and the Howard came together to make sure this happened. So again, you got other people, members of different organizations. There are people who are not members of the Divine Nine, but went to a historically Black college, HBCU. So at the end of the day, again, we don't see division. We see unity, and what can we do? So I think for me personally, I was excited because I was a part of that, but I also understood all the people in the background that allowed for this moment to happen. And that doesn't fall on deaf ears for me. And that's real important to see the community unite for something good. And I'm proud that we all did.
Yes, while we're still talking about Vice President-elect Harris, how do you think that her being in this position that she is in now, like come January, how do you think that's going to affect our nation as a whole and just communities across the nation?
I think she's big on hope, healing, and just. I mean, her background, I mean, obviously as an attorney, as a judge, as a senator, she understands the political climate. She understands what's going on in the courtroom. She understands what's going on outside of the courtroom as a part of her lived experience. So I think that she's going to bring her lived experience into her office. I mean, you can't deny what you grew up in. You can't deny that she was a result of 2 immigrant parents. What does that do when you are raised in a household where people were not originally from this country? Think about those conversations at the dining room table. Think about the things that she saw firsthand her mother have to experience and endure as a woman of South Asian descent and as an immigrant, but still persevere, still put food on the table, still raise her and her family, her sister. I mean, this is powerful. And that's going to shape, it already has shaped who she is. And it will continue to shape the policies, procedures, and that she implements, grows, or stops because of her experience, because of her lived experience, and because of the people, the good counsel that she will have around her. And as well as President-elect Biden. I mean, he's going to have to talk to his vice president. That is his confidant. That is the person that's going to help him execute on the vision that he talked so eloquently about for the past 2 years.
And we did mention earlier that you're from Howard, which is an HBCU, and there seems to be an obviously opinion of HBCUs that we don't prepare you for the outside world. And aside from the success of Senator Harris that the world is not aware of, would you like to share with us why that is just simply not true, and share any other successful people who have graduated from HBCUs?
Absolutely. Well, clearly it's not true. But whenever something is different, whenever something perhaps is owned by a minority-owned company or affiliated with marginalized groups or minoritized groups, all of a sudden it's not good enough. But at the end of the day, what's the narrative you tell yourself? What is truth and what is fake news? So are you going to allow people to tell you that the experience that I received at Howard University didn't cultivate me to be the first in my family of many firsts, okay? And then now, I'm a dentist, okay? So, and I attended the #1 dental school in the country after Howard, University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, and graduated, was the president of my class my first year. So you're telling me Howard didn't prepare me for the #1 dental school in the country, an internationally recognized university. It's facts. It's simply just not true. So when I hear people say, oh, well, they don't prepare you for the real world, I'm in the real world every day. And I feel even more prepared because of Black college and university, period. I was prepared for the predominantly white University of Michigan and excelled there because I was cultivated in a historic moment. Every single day, every single moment, I felt like I was a part of history. No one, you can't recreate that unless you attended a school such as Howard. You wouldn't even be able to understand it. So when people don't understand something, what do? They vilify it. They say it's not good enough because they can't even wrap their mind around it. How did this happen? How did we create a stellar, excellent university? How did that happen? On their watch. As a matter of fact, they paid for it. Okay? So, when you put the money out, eventually you give us enough access, we will soar. So what they didn't count on is that one day we were going to forget about how they whipped us. One day we were going to not really forget about it, but we were going to allow for that pain to propel us to open up a book. When you told us we couldn't read, we would sneak and go read it anyway. Okay? So you can't stop the strength that flows through our veins. No matter how many doors you close, no matter how many rules, how many policies that are inequitable, one day someone's going to wake up and say, that's just not just anymore. And you know what's going to happen? Don't open up the door. Because when you open up the door and we empower ourselves with education, with strength, and with supreme spiritual faith, we will be unstoppable. Call a sport. I name any sport, we probably are the best at it, okay? Why? Because when you oppress someone for too long, they still got time to what? Grow their mind. And one day, you got one shot. You can, if with faith, with education, and with preparation, you can excel. And at that point, they go, how did you get to the table? How did you get here? The real question is, how did you let me catch up? Second thing, there's numerous historic people that graduated from Howard University. I think of Felicia Rashad, Debbie Allen, Chadwick, okay? God rest his soul. That's just in theater, okay? That's just in the arts. Politics, we're in the arts, we're in medicine. The first of the first of the first, name a first, probably came out of Howard or Hampton or FAMU or Morehouse or Spelman. Why? Because that is the ground at which true knowledge comes, true knowledge is cultivated, and people become. That book, Becoming, it's a ing because it's continuous. You continuously become. But guess what? me and my friends, we never feel like we arrive anywhere because there's always work to do. So it's becoming, it is in action. It doesn't stop.
Yes, you named the school I want to go to. I want to go to FAMU.
All right.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am. I love the Black community. And while we move on to the Black community, it's been a bit of a rough last 4 years. And how do you think that it has affected the Black community as a whole, and how the results of this election is going to change the overall health of the community?
You know, in the middle of the pandemic, it hit February, March, depending on which state you were in. We all were in our homes, and all we saw were Black bodies being abused. Someone's knee on a neck, and I can't breathe, and you have to hear a grown man call for their mother. These are trying times. And during these times, you will see to the top. And it will not be because we can't. It will not be because we aren't able. It will be because we have even more motivation to do the right thing, to make the change. There's always be the change you want to see in this world. So we have to pick up our tears like we've been doing for centuries. And we need to say, not again. Not again. So not on my watch. So we can't just look at who's in the White House. We need to look at who is the governor. We need to look at who are your judges at the highest level to your local level. Who's your sheriff? Who's understanding what training is happening at the police department? Do they have implicit bias training, or do they think that's a joke? Okay, so it goes at all levels. Who's the principal? Who's the assistant principal? Who's the superintendent at a majority Black or Latino community? We need to ask ourselves those questions, because we know that we have people of color who are qualified to do all of those things, and that come with an experience that others do not come with, just for the sheer fact of the color of their skin. So it was a trying time. It was a trying time. It still is a trying time. People are still dying. But we now have devices that allows for us to tape it. Before, we didn't always have a little smartphone. We couldn't even afford the smartphone, okay? Or the equivalent of that. They took our power away for many years. Women couldn't even vote. Then women got to vote. African Americans couldn't vote. Now African Americans can vote. But now what do they want to do? They want to suppress the election, suppress the voices. So for years they've been saying, well, the state handles that. Oh, no, we can't do this at the federal level. The state handles this to handle the election. Oh, no, state, you can't handle that though. So it's like you can't have your cake and eat it too. So we need to just be cognizant of our surroundings. We understand the system. We need to, every once in a while we got to put Facebook, Twitter, Instagram down and actually read some real substance. Because sometimes even what we see in the news now is a little bit fake. So we need to guard ourselves and be prepared. What I see in terms of the transition, there's hope again. There's hope again. I don't know, because we have a few more days of a different president. And so we'll see what happens. But I know I have hope for our future. And I can say in the past 4 years, I didn't have that. It wasn't there. I had hope in our local government here in my state. We have Governor Gretchen Whitmer, and I did have hope within our state. But nationally, at times, I was concerned about the safety and welfare of the citizens in America. COVID-19 really showed us a lot about our ineptness. Showed us a lot about our ability to handle a health crisis. Some people are just not right for the moment. And right now, our current administration is just not right, which America needs. We need someone that's listening to the experts, be in a healthcare background and know how important to have evidence based upon real evidence. What the data shows. and not, this is an emotional decision. This is a logical decision. And that's what we need right now in this moment.
And you did mention the current president, which is actually leads me to my next question. And there is, some people believe that the current president will not concede and will take charge of his voters, like the charges he's had on voters fraud, all the way to the Supreme Court, and where those charges will be upheld. And just some believe he will try to overturn the election. What are your thoughts on that? Like, have you heard about this?
Well, they absolutely heard about it. I mean, it's all through the news. There's certain people that are not prepared to accept defeat. Our current president is one of those people. So I say, by the letter of the law, exhaust every possible opportunity that you have that is legal. And I support that, because if it was an opposite situation, for example, let's say in the state of Georgia with Stacey Abrams, I would want Stacey Abrams to be able to do everything in her power legally to fight the result of an election. However, when it's all said and done, and Arizona stays the way that it is, and Wisconsin stays the way that it is, and Michigan stays the way that it is, and Georgia stays the way that it is, and Philly, Pennsylvania stays the way that it is, silence is what I need. And it is important to have a safe and secure transition from one administrator to the other. That's in anything, whether it's the presidency, CEO, whatever. You need to have that smooth transition. And I think that anyone who was rightfully elected should have a smooth transition into the office. And I'm a praying woman, and I pray that this will happen. I pray and I have faith that the right thing will occur. But at the end of the day, there was a statement that was released in July by the Biden campaign. And I'm not going to quote it word for word because I don't have it in front of me. But to sum it up, he basically said the White House knows how to remove trespassers. So, said that back in July. It was repeated 2 days, I think, before his acceptance speech. And then they're like, I don't need to redraft a statement on how to deal with trespassers. I wrote that back in July because the current administrator told us what he was going to do if it didn't go his way. So we're already prepared. We already know this was going to happen. So what we're going to do is keep on doing what we're doing, creating our task force for COVID-19, because what we need to have is a plan to save American lives. That's what we need to do. So I'm not going to listen to the noise, because that's all it is. And case after case after case after case is being overturned. The judges are like, not enough evidence. I'm sorry, Rudy Giuliani. I'm sorry, President Trump. It's not enough evidence. We're going to have to close this case. You're more than happy. We're, willing to review when you give us evidence. Until then, this is just hearsay, and you're just creating more and more turmoil in our country that doesn't need it right now. Our COVID numbers are the highest we've seen ever. And we're talking about an election that's over, that was correct, that actually had people on both sides of the party looking at the election. And don't talk to me about the state of Georgia. Isn't the Secretary of State a Republican? And isn't the governor a Republican? And you gonna talk to me about Georgia? If they're telling you everything is okay over here, they're on your side. So clearly it was fair. And at the end of the day, he would need every single state in order to win. And we know that's not gonna happen because it was not widespread corruption. It is the rhetoric of divisiveness that is kind of what I believe the administration has been able to create a whole platform around.
I just want to, first of all, just thank you for your time. I only have one more question, so I just really appreciate you coming on here today and allowing for me to talk to you and ask you these questions. And my final question would be, what is your advice? Like, what do you suggest to teens like me, teens my age, and who are not old enough to vote, but would still like to exercise our voice, to like to exercise our rights in our communities.
Get involved. Get involved at any age, whether it's helping your mom, dad, grandma, go out, knock on some doors to get the vote out. You can still use your social media presence to talk to people, because at the end of the day, you probably have friends who are 18. They may be in high school, but they're 18 years old, right? They can still vote in the upcoming election, especially in your state where you are. We have a runoff that's happening in January. So use your sphere of influence. You have social media, do what you need to do to get your groups and your people to understand what the real news is and understand your perspective. You don't have to sit on the sidelines until you're 18. I know I used to knock on doors when I was 12, okay, in the city of Detroit, making sure people knew what their rights were. And, because everyone, unfortunately, couldn't read. So sometimes I would sit there and help people read so they could understand what was the literature at which that was giving them. We can't make assumptions about people's abilities. So you know how to read, okay? So that's something very simple, just helping people in your community understand what's happening, the current events, and what's real. The second thing I think that you can do is to continue to volunteer. You can still write your state official. You don't have to be 18 to write to your state official. Tell them how you feel. Tell them how you feel. Tell them what local laws are impacting you. Tell them what's happening around COVID-19 and your state's response. Tell them how you feel about, the possibility of them during this recount and how that's going to look and how that's going to show up. So even just because of your age, your voice is still mighty. Doing things like this, interviewing people, getting this information out. These are all examples of things that you can do to not just inform people, but to get communities connected, involved, and allow for this whole situation to be more transparent. Because you'd be surprised, some people get a little confused. Some people, they shut down because they don't feel like they know enough, and they don't get involved because they're embarrassed. And what you can do is to help those who want the information, get the information out to them. And get them all the information. I've always approached things from a bipartisan perspective. Like I have friends who are on both sides of the line. And, when I talk to them, some of them are pro-choice, some of them, are not. Some of them are pro-gun, some of them are not. And at the end of the day, it takes a person who has generous listening skills. In order to actually evoke change, you have to listen first. And I think you have to listen to both sides to really understand, well, what parts do we actually agree on? And how can we meet in the middle to do the things that we need to do?
I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. And it was truly just my pleasure to speak with you. I know myself, I learned a lot from this discussion, and I'm sure all of our viewers will too. And I thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you for allowing me to be here. And I wish you nothing but Godspeed as you are in your virtual remote learning for school. I encourage you and all of the members of this particular group to stay encouraged. I mean, these are trying times, but this is going to define you. It's going to make you stronger. It's going to make you more nimble. You're going to be able to evolve much quicker than when I was in your shoes, because you've seen things that I didn't see at your age, and you've had to adapt to things that I didn't have to adapt to until I was, much later in my life. So this is going to, I know it may be difficult. I know things will look different. I know proms will look different and graduations will look different. But one day the doors will open. One day the sun will shine again the way that it used to. And it's still shining right now. We're just on the inside. But one day everything will come back, but you will be stronger as a result of it. So I'll be praying for you and your family, and hope you have a wonderful holiday season. Thank you.
You. And this has been Bailey Bell from the Teens in the D Community Perspective. Be sure to subscribe to the Teens in the D broadcast media on YouTube, and please follow Teens in the D on Instagram.